Mara Rowen had learned to walk lightly through the world, not because she was afraid of being seen, but because she'd spent most of her life learning how to go unnoticed. Her flat was small, 2 rooms at most, tucked above a bakery that always smelled better than her dinner. She paid her rent 2 days late every month, but never enough to raise alarm. She wore the same 3 coats in rotation and had stitched the lining of her favorite one twice that winter. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't mention it. She worked in the marketing department of a mid-sized company recently acquired by a global firm, the sort of acquisition that came with smiles at first, then silence, then the soft, terrible rumor, layoffs. No one said it outright, but everyone knew. Desks had already started clearing themselves. And Mara, who was never first to speak in meetings, who didn't go out for drinks, who no one fought to sit beside, she wasn't going to be kept. Still, she arrived on time. Always. It was dusk when she left work that evening, the sky bruised with cloud, the air sharp against her skin. She didn't take the bus, she couldn't afford to, so she walked the long stretch home, her hands tucked into her pockets, head slightly bowed, the way people walk when they're thinking about what to cook from what's left in the fridge. She was halfway down Hollowmere Street when she noticed her. A little girl. Alone. She was sitting at the edge of a bench near the corner pharmacy, legs swinging, eyes wide but blank in the way children's eyes get when they've stopped crying. Her coat was open. Her hair was tangled at the back. She couldn't have been more than 5. Maybe 6. Mara stopped walking. People passed the child, glanced, kept moving. That's how the city worked. Someone else will see. Someone else will act. Mara didn't move on. "Hi," she said softly, crouching near the bench. "Are you okay?" The girl looked at her, uncertain. She said nothing. Mara's heart was already rising in her chest. She'd never been good with children, hadn't held one since her teenage years when she used to babysit a neighbor's son for grocery money, but something about this child's silence pierced through her. "Where's your mummy? Or your daddy?" The girl opened her fist. Inside was a crumpled slip of paper, damp at the edges, the ink smeared but still legible. Gideon Astia, emergency contact. A number, half erased. No address. Mara exhaled slowly. "Okay," she murmured. "All right." She looked around again, half expecting someone to come rushing, saying "That's my child." But no one did. She took off her scarf and gently wrapped it around the child's neck. "I'm going to take you somewhere warm. Just for now. Is that all right?" The girl nodded. Just once. Mara's flat was not the kind of place anyone expected to host children. She cleared laundry off the couch while the girl stood quietly in the doorway, her boots dripping a trail onto the cracked linoleum. "I'm Mara," she said, moving slowly, gently. "What's your name?" A pause. Then, almost a whisper. "Isla." Mara smiled. "That's beautiful." She found an old hoodie that might fit, helped Isla out of her damp clothes, then microwaved soup, canned, a little too salty, but warm. Isla ate quietly, holding the spoon with both hands like it was sacred. They didn't talk much that night. Mara let her sleep in her bed, watched her chest rise and fall for longer than she should have, then curled on the couch herself with a thin blanket and questions she couldn't answer. Why was Isla alone? Where was her father? Why hadn't the police been called yet? She would take her in tomorrow. She would do everything right. But for now, for tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't in a long time. Not pity. Not fear. Just purpose. In the middle of the night, Isla woke up crying softly. Mara was there in seconds. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder. "I want my mum," Isla whimpered. Mara's heart cracked open, slow and deep. "I know," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. I'm just here for now. But I'll stay until you're safe. I promise." And she meant it. Even if no one else would remember what she did. Even if the world moved on like it always did. She would stay. The next morning, Mara walked Isla to the nearest police station under a grey sky that felt like it hadn't quite decided whether to rain. Isla held her hand tightly the entire way, not clinging, just holding, as though she already knew this was temporary and wanted to remember what steady felt like. Inside, the officer on duty looked up slowly from behind the desk. He was kind, in a procedural way, not in the way Mara had been. Mara explained everything: where she found Isla, the crumpled note, the smeared number. The officer nodded along, already typing. "Gideon Asdia," he muttered. "Yes, we've had a few calls in the system from a staff member of his, saying a child's gone missing. No direct report from him, though. Odd." Mara frowned. "So she has been reported missing?" "Sort of. A caretaker called it in, said the child disappeared during a walk. The father's out of the country, or was. It's messy." He leaned back in his chair. "We'll need to hold her here for a few hours while we run things through properly." At the sound of "hold her," Isla's small fingers tightened around Mara's coat sleeve. The officer must have noticed, because after a moment, he sighed and said, "Look, if you're willing to keep her for another day or two, we can fast-track the process while she stays with someone she already trusts." Mara hesitated. She didn't hesitate out of fear. She hesitated because it had taken so long to feel like she was doing something right, and now it was being named, made official. It scared her how much she wanted to say yes. "I can do that," she said. Back at the flat, everything changed. Not dramatically, but in quiet, slow ways. Mara began waking earlier so Isla wouldn't feel rushed. She packed her own breakfast and saved the good bread for Isla. She picked up crayons from the corner shop on her way home and found herself checking weather forecasts so she could plan small evening walks with the girl. Nothing far, just down the street, where the leaves collected in little golden piles along the pavement. Isla opened up in pieces. She liked strawberry jam but not butter. She hated loud music and loved animals with sad eyes. Her mother had passed away the year before, cancer, though she didn't use the word, and she'd been living mostly with her father's house staff while he traveled. She said it like it was normal, like absence was just a shape in the room. Sometimes, when Mara thought Isla was asleep, she'd hear her whisper, "This place feels smaller than ours, but nicer." Mara never replied. She just let the words hang in the dark, soft and sacred. On the third evening, Mara came home from work to find Isla sitting cross-legged on the couch with a crayon drawing in her lap. She held it up with pride. It was a child's version of their little flat: the table, the chipped mug, the yellow chair by the window. And beside the window, two stick figures. One tall, with hair like strings. One small, with a red circle smile. "That's you," Isla said, pointing to the tall one. "You look after me." Mara swallowed. She didn't trust her voice. That night, Mara opened her email and saw the subject line: "Company update. Layoffs begin Friday." She stared at it for a long time. It wasn't unexpected, just ill-timed. She closed the laptop. In the bed beside her, Isla had fallen asleep with one arm over Mara's waist, her breath warm and steady. And for the first time in months, Mara didn't feel afraid of losing her job. She didn't feel like she was disappearing. 2 mornings later, the call came from the police. "We've reached Mr. Asdia. He's back in the country and on his way. Can you bring Isla in this afternoon?" Mara thanked them and hung up slowly. She looked over at Isla, still finishing her toast. "Isla," she said gently, "we found your dad." Isla blinked. "He's here." Mara nodded. She watched something flicker across the girl's face. Not joy, not sadness. Just uncertainty. "Will you come with me?" Isla asked. "To see him?" "Of course," Mara said. "I'll be right there." At the police station, everything felt clinical again. Forms, ID checks, security doors. Isla stayed close to Mara's side until a tall man stepped through the inner door, removing his sunglasses. He looked disheveled, expensive coat, tired face. His eyes were the same shade as Isla's. He froze when he saw her. Isla, he said. His voice cracked. Isla didn't run to him. She walked. Mara watched them embrace, a slow, cautious hug like two people remembering how to hold each other. Then Isla turned back and walked to Mara. She stood on tiptoe and whispered something in her ear. Mara smiled, trying not to cry. Gideon Astia walked over. "You're Mara, right?" She nodded. "Thank you," he said. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to," Mara said softly. "She's safe. That's enough." "No," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's not." He asked for her contact. She gently refused. "Really? I didn't do it for a reward." Gideon studied her for a long moment, not like a man used to being refused, but like someone seeing something rare, something he didn't quite know how to hold. They said goodbye, and Mara walked back home alone. The flat was quiet. Too quiet. She stood in the middle of it, unsure what to do with her hands. Then she noticed it. On the table, left behind. A crayon drawing. Two stick figures. Still holding hands. Mara went back to work the next day with an ache in her chest she hadn't expected. It was the small things, only one cup on the counter now, one spoon in the sink. The silence in the flat had returned, thick and sterile. It clung to her, even as she walked into the office and took her usual seat near the end of the long shared table. No one noticed she'd been missing for a few days. Or if they did, they didn't ask. The office was unusually tense. Rumors had turned to whispers, and whispers to stares. By noon, the internal memo came in. "All staff, please prepare for an all-hands meeting at 3 p.m. with the CEO of Astia International Holdings." Mara read the line 3 times. She stood up slowly, her throat tightening. Astia. The name rolled through her chest like distant thunder. She tried to dismiss the thought. It couldn't be. At 2:58, they were all herded into the glass conference room. People whispered, straightened jackets, pulled out phones they weren't really checking. Mara sat in the far corner, as she always did. Her hands were cold. Then the door opened, and Gideon Astia stepped inside. He wore the same coat as that day at the station, but now his posture was different. Straight-backed, composed, still tired, but polished. A man used to rooms like this. A man used to owning them. He scanned the group with practiced calm. Then his eyes landed on Mara. He didn't falter, just paused. A breath, a flicker of something only she would notice. Then he turned to the room. "Good afternoon," he began. "My name is Gideon Astia. I've recently taken full executive oversight of this branch following the acquisition. I know the word acquisition makes people nervous. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. Some changes will come, but not the kind you're expecting today." A hush fell over the room. No one is being let go today. Heads turned. Chairs shifted. Someone audibly exhaled. "In fact," Gideon continued, "I want to introduce a new initiative before we talk logistics, something that reflects the direction I believe this company needs to grow in." He let the silence stretch, then said, "We are launching a new division, a collaboration with our human capital arm. The goal is to invest in community engagement, family support, and internal well-being. It's not just for PR. It's personal. Because sometimes a company needs to remember its people are human beings first." Mara didn't move. She felt the weight of his words settle over her like rain. Gideon closed the meeting with a few more technical notes. No one asked questions. They were too stunned. As the room began to empty, he walked slowly toward her. Everyone else was pretending not to notice. He stopped in front of her chair. His voice was quiet, direct. "Can we speak privately, Ms. Rowen?" They sat in a smaller office, door closed. Mara kept her hands in her lap. Gideon didn't sit behind the desk. He sat across from her. Level. "I meant what I said," he told her. "The new division, it's real. And I want you to run it." Mara blinked. I'm Not qualified. He gave a faint smile. You're more qualified than most people with degrees and titles. You saw someone who needed care and you gave it, without hesitation, without conditions. That's not policy. That's character. Mara shook her head. I don't want you to feel. This isn't about guilt, he cut in gently. It's about trust. She stared at the floor. What would I even be doing? You'd help design the program, lead the team, set the tone. I'll support you, but it's yours, if you want it. She looked up. Finally. I didn't help Isla because I wanted something. I know, Gideon said. That's exactly why I want you. That evening, Mara walked home in a daze. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't even open the offer email he'd promised to send. Her flat was still quiet. But this time, she didn't feel alone. Later that night, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo came through. It was a drawing, a new one. This time, 3 stick figures. The smallest had long yellow hair. The tallest had a dark coat. The one in the middle had curly lines and a wide smile. Underneath, in crooked, messy handwriting, us. 2 weeks passed. The offer sat in Mara's inbox, unread but not forgotten, the subject line stark and still. Proposal for new division, personal and community initiatives. From Gideon Aestia. She hadn't responded. Not because she didn't want it, but because she was afraid of what it meant to finally be seen. At work, things had shifted. People were warmer, just slightly. The whispers had changed from layoffs to new beginnings. Her manager had started saying her name more often. Some even asked for her opinion in meetings. It unsettled her. And yet, when she walked home, the world still looked the same. The bakery still smelled like cinnamon and rising bread. Her coat still had the stitched lining. She still cooked rice with too much salt. And no child's voice echoed down her hallway anymore. Until one afternoon. She had just stepped inside, arms full of groceries, when a knock came at the door. Not loud. Not rushed. Just small. She opened it, expecting a neighbor. Instead, Isla. Standing there with a wide grin and her coat half-buttoned, hair neater now, but still curling at the temples. Behind her stood Gideon Aestia, hands in his pockets, looking both tired and quietly amused. I didn't tell her we were coming, he said. She insisted. Said she knew the way. Mara blinked, stunned, then dropped the bag on the floor and knelt. Hi, she whispered. Isla threw her arms around her. You didn't answer my drawing, Isla said into her shoulder. I loved it, Mara whispered back. I just didn't know how to say thank you. You could say yes, Isla mumbled. Mara pulled back. Yes. To Daddy's thing. He said you were thinking. But I think it's a good idea. You're good at helping. Gideon smiled softly. She doesn't forget much. Mara stood. Come in, please. They sat on the worn yellow chair and shared tea and the 2 salty rice, and Gideon didn't flinch at the chipped cups or the single dim bulb overhead. He asked her questions about what she would do if the project were hers, real questions, thoughtful ones. She answered slowly at first, then more easily. He listened like she mattered. Before they left, Isla tugged at Mara's sleeve. Will I see you again? Mara nodded. You can come any time. That night, after they were gone, Mara opened the email and clicked reply. 3 months later, the new initiative launched. Quietly, without press or banners. Just a room full of people who needed someone like Mara to guide them through uncertainty with grace. She wasn't suddenly rich. Her flat stayed the same. But she stood a little taller now. She wore her name with less hesitation. One afternoon, while reviewing intake proposals, she found a note slipped into her inbox tray. Child's handwriting. Blue crayon. It said, "Thank you for choosing me first. So I chose you back." Isla. Mara folded the note gently and placed it in her desk drawer. right beside the company badge that now read, Mara Rowen, Director, Community and Care. The kindness we give when no one is watching becomes the very thing that changes our lives. Mara didn't help Isla for recognition, she helped because it was the right thing to do. And in a world that often overlooks quiet people with gentle hearts, her compassion didn't go unnoticed. It echoed, not loudly, but deeply, and returned to her in a form she never asked for but truly deserved. The lesson: what you do in silence speaks loudest in the hearts of those you touch. And kindness, even when unseen, always finds its way back. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you.